I'm Scott Eastwood, and I play Jan. Jan is dangerous. Very dangerous. My first impressions of him was he was a hothead. He was very unpredictable, and that I really liked. I was really drawn to that. Sort of like an exciting character. He was kind of a live wire. The interesting thing about Guy Ritchie's films is he loves to explore these criminal underworld, but all the characters have their own flaws, their own issues. They're all going through something, and that's what makes his films, I think, really interesting, because you relate to a lot of the characters, even if they're a criminal or somebody that might have done terrible things that you can't relate to. You can relate to parts of them. I wanted Jan to be flashy, to be very into his appearance, into his looks, into stuff, into things. He likes jewelry. He likes, he just likes nice things. He's also we also decided, Guy wanted to kind of rough me up a little bit. So we decided to do a prosthetic scar and a contact lens that's specifically made and painted. So they measured my eye. You go in and get a contact lens, and then they send it away to an artist, and that artist creates sort of a milky eye, and then I wear one eye for the entire film. That's been its own fun challenges. It's an action movie, fighting good guys, fighting bad guys. So the stunt stuff's always been. I'm a pretty active guy, so that stuff's I think really fun for me. Highlight of my career working with Guy Ritchie. He's just like a no bullshit director. He's not. There's really no other way to say it. He's not a very Hollywood director, which I really appreciate and like. He's just a guy who gets it done and goes out there and does it and shoots it in the simplest way possible, but also a really interesting way. And I really like working for him. What makes Guy Ritchie films interesting is that there's a lot of gray area. There's a lot of gray area. You can something. The bad guys are bad. The good guys are bad. It makes the films interesting because it's not things aren't black and white. And in classic Guy Ritchie fashion, there's going to be some people who are going to die, and it's going to be a fun ride. You hear that? That's what it's like to be on a set of a Guy Ritchie film.
My name is Neve Alger, and I play Dana. Dana is a part of this cash truck crew. She works at Fortico, this place, and she's part of this family of kind of misfit guards who, they're quick talking. They're quite. It's quite a masculine energy in this place, and Dana seems to be able to hold her own. She's got this kind of tough exterior, but inside she is quite fragile and damaged, but makes up for it by her exterior. I think for Dana, she's always been a woman in a man's world. She's strong-willed and she's quick, and she can give back just as well as she takes, Guy orchestrates this black box, which is basically more like an animated table read. You know, everyone's up on their feet. It's a great introduction to meet everyone and to meet the director and see how he works, and that's the way in which Guy works. He's very quick paced. There's a pacing to his direction, and I think the black box is an incredible insight into how he's going to work with you on the day. That he changes a lot of the dialogue on the spot because he can hear it, and you know, he's a man of instincts. He goes with his instincts, and if he hears it and it doesn't sound right, he immediately has another line that you can substitute in. And a lot of the time, it's the right thing. But he doesn't hold actors back. You know, you get to play around, and that's what he creates. It's very fast paced. Everyone is very much on it, and yeah, I love it. When I think of Guy Ritchie's films, I think of pacing. It's quick, it's sharp. The dialogue is always sharp. It's tight. You know, he doesn't sit in scenes too long for them to get heavy, but they always have. There's a poignancy scene, there's a drama in them, but he doesn't milk it. You know, you move on, so that by the time something has landed with you, you're immediately into something else. And I think that's really telling of him and his way of filmmaking. I think for Dana, when H first comes into the crew, it's you know, it's like almost a new little toy to play with. You know, he's fresh in, he's fresh out of water. You know, she sees this English lad and is quite taken by him at first. So yeah, I think she quite liked him. She quite likes, you know, this H character, and is quite intrigued to find out a bit more about him because he is quite mysterious and guarded. Like a lot of the characters in it, you know, they are quite guarded, and she kind of develops this relationship with him that becomes quite romantic, slightly romantic, and from there, you know, finds out a lot more about himself that, you know, she wished she hadn't.
My name is Josh Hartnett, and I play Boy Sweat Dave. He's an employee of the Fortico security company, and he's a cash truck driver slash messenger, and he's a sort of wannabe antagonist toward Jason's character H, but he's someone who maybe is a little too comedic in value to be actually taken seriously. My idea of Dave is that he wanted to be in the military, but wasn't able to be in the military for a multitude of reasons, probably mostly his temperament. Then he moved out to Los Angeles to be an actor, and he found himself not being very good at that either. And then he thought he could employ both of those sort of mentalities in a job like this, where he gets to pretend he's like really tough, and he gets to, you know, like butch it up, but really he's a kid who grew up without a father, who just wants to prove himself to everyone around. He's very close to his mommy, and so in order to scare other people off, he barks a lot more than he bites, and H obviously doesn't respond to that, and that's why Boy Sweat gets sort of remanded to the background. Guy works like no one I've ever worked with before. He wrote the script, and it's based off of a movie, but he wrote this version of the script, and yet we come into work every day and he is ready to rewrite every word in order to sort of keep it fresh, I think. And he's constantly coming up with ideas. He's very much in tune with what he wants to do, but it's something that seems to be like a sort of a spiritual experience for him, I guess. That might sound a little too, he won't like me saying that. But it seems to be sort of like he's looking for catharsis in the experience of creation. And so he's sitting there coming up with ideas as we work. And so really when you walk into work every day, you don't know what you're going to end up doing. And I like that. I like that we have to kind of react to the day's news, the sort of new, the new twists and turns of the day. I've always been a huge fan of Guy, so I wanted to just be in it for the experience and see what he could get, what he saw in me as an actor for this role. I think Guy has a real, I know he has a real love of language, so he's listening to it constantly. And so when it feels right to him, it's only, yes, the visuals have to be there, but when it sounds right, in the dialogue, that's when he seems to be really excited. And that is probably one of the biggest signatures of his work.
Jason and I think we've had the same relationship for 22 years, we've known each other. And I find it mutually respectful, always has been. Obviously I'm the best chess player and I can do more press-ups than Jason, which he finds embarrassing, as he should. On chess, he obviously loses, and has done for years. There is photographic evidence to support me on that. Yeah, I mean, obviously, over the last 22 years, there's a couple of games he's won. They're usually charity to keep him inspired and not lose the will to live on set. Now, his chess actually is quite intuitive and, as you can imagine, aggressive. So, no, but he doesn't really stand a chance on the chessboard. Where he does stand a chance is in the pool, right? He can swim rather well, Jason. And he can stay underwater for quite a long time. Press-ups he's all right on. Yeah, but I don't like competing with him under the water. Jason I've been competing with physically and intellectually for 22 years. And where I can't get into trouble is underwater with Jason. But the other thing is that he's talk about positive competition. I've never really minded, and I don't really want him to know this because I pretend that I do mind, but I've never really minded losing to him. In the 2 occasions out of the several thousand that we've competed with, that the couple of times where he has won, it's not really bothered me that much. There's no competition when it comes to cooking or grilling. Yeah, I mean, you know, he's an amateur when it comes to grilling. We've got a great ensemble cast. We've got Josh Hartnett, Scott Eastwood, Annie Garcia, Robert Delaney, Eddie Marzan, Holt McCallany, Jeffrey Donovan, Neve Alger. I really enjoyed working with all of these guys. And they're all very respectful and all very professional. I can tell you about Post Malone in the sense that he's the loveliest man I've ever met that you can imagine. He has fantastic manners, incidentally. He's incredibly polite, very professional, turns up on time, is prepared to work overtime, doesn't complain, is, as it transpires, very talented in many ways, and honestly was a breath of enthusiastic fresh air to everyone on the set. And when Posty left, everyone was awed by the generosity of his spirit. I think some actors find my process at the beginning a bit unnerving. The only reason I know that is because I'm told that afterward. But you know, what we try to do is create a roadmap, which is not too definitive, although initially it's definitive, and then from that I try with the actors on the day to improve the dialogue or the plot on the day as much as we can, and in my experience that usually improves by at least 50%. But what it can do is it can trip up an actor if they've got a significant amount of dialogue to learn. But I'm afraid once you're in the situation, that situation will inform some form of evolution improvement on the script, and that makes it more challenging on the actor because the actor has to start to learn those lines quickly, keeps them on their toes, but it can be unnerving. I think there are so many components within a film that you can afford to be creative, and I think that credit sequences are worth spending time on and are worth investing some creative whatever. Yeah, I mean, there are so many different ways in which you can be creative in a film, and I just think credit sequences is just another opportunity into which to exercise your creativity. So I think we've got quite a good credit sequence within this equation. And what we try to do is that, rather than putting a needle drop or a familiar song over the credit sequence, because it seemed to take us out of the movie, although there's a logical fit to putting a source track to putting a needle drop on over the credit sequence, we decided to go for score on the credit sequence, which sets the tone for the rest of the film, although it's not a traditional needle drop. I felt as though it was honest to the theme of the film. The credit sequence was modelled on the fact that we call Wrath of Man, which is a biblical quote, and the demonic and angelic imagery and symbolism that comes from a biblical theme. I felt as though the credit sequence could have just been about the symbolism of biblical iconography and symbolism, but we sort of mix that up with imagery from the film as well.
My name is Jeffrey Donovan and I play Jackson. So Jackson is ex-military. He served in Afghanistan, dishonorably discharged, and now is trying to support his wife and 2 kids. A bad break in Afghanistan caused him to be discharged dishonorably, which means he's pretty much a felon and he can't make a living. And so he has to make ends meet any way he can, and he's a highly skilled soldier. So there's not a lot of jobs for soldiers without weapons. So he comes up with an idea to start hitting over cash trucks. Every criminal thinks they're not a criminal, and he's no different. I think that he has a lot more honor than most people. The way he treats his crew and treats the victims in the heists, but as with any good plan, it just goes horribly wrong, and the stakes just keep getting higher, and he's got to up his game, and that's when, you know, shit happens. It feels like an American heist movie, which is to, I think, you know, Guy and his team's credit, that's what he's making. He's making an American heist movie. So, but I've certainly enjoyed shooting here, that's for sure. What I've always been a fan of is the rhythm of a Guy Ritchie film. There's almost like a score to the dialogue and the rhythm and the way people speak, and everyone has their kind of unique voice. And the same as being, and it's always been a British voice, but here it's all American, but he's still bringing a Guy Ritchie tone and rhythm to all of the scenes, and it's really great, because you want to pinch yourself going, God, I'm in a Guy Ritchie movie, but then you also go, shut up, act the scene. So I'm like a fangirl at the same time, and I'm also acting this tough guy. So.
My name is Holt McCallany, and I play Bullet. Bullet is a former soldier who is now retired from the military and is working for an armored car company. And he's generally a kind of extroverted and gregarious kind of a guy, but he's dissatisfied with his life and his prospects since leaving the military. And this has led him into criminality. You know, this is one of the hallmarks of Guy's films. Terrific action sequences, as well as all of the signature elements of Guy's style, the dark humor, the clever banter, do you know what I mean? The witty dialogue, much of which Guy writes himself, or some of which on the day that we're filming. There's a kind of a richness of language that exists in Guy's movies that I've always been really drawn to. Some of it's irreverent, and often the characters can be ribbing each other, but it really kind of epitomizes the way that men interact with each other, what Ernest Hemingway used to call the language of men. This is something that Guy really understands. And and we have that. We have all of these, you know, great characters, all of whom have these funny nicknames: Boy Sweat Dave and Hollow Bob and Sticky John. You know, my character is called Bullet, and Jason's character is H. You know, and it's clever, and it's got humor, but it's also got tension. It's a thriller. It's got great action sequences, and I think the film is going to appeal to a wide audience. The hardcore Guy Ritchie fans are going to love it. It's got great action sequences, and it's got a really charismatic protagonist in Jason Statham. I think that Bullet has a lot of admiration and respect for Jason Statham's character, H, because H is clearly a very talented and a very capable kind of a guy. Also, you know, when he foils an attempted robbery, I get a glimpse of, you know, not only his ability as a fighter, but also, you know, his resourcefulness and the way that he responds under pressure. He's very impressive. But at the same time, this causes me to begin to become a little bit suspicious of him. Because why is it that such a talented, such a guy who's so together, you know, has found himself in this kind of relatively low-paying sort of, you know, security type of a job? You know, he seems like the kind of guy who could be successful in many different areas, you know, many different professions. So I begin to ask myself the question: is there a little more than meets the eye to Jason's character, H?
Wrath of Man is a story of revenge based around the cash truck business in Los Angeles. And Jason Statham plays H, who is on a tear of vengeance to find the killers of his innocent son, who was by accident caught up in a robbery. He was a witness at a violent cash truck robbery. Unbeknownst to the robbers, that Jason Statham is a crime lord himself, so he's very qualified to find the culprits involved in this heinous and unfortunate accident. There are few subjects as sensitive as the unpalatable concept of a child dying before the parent. It's even worse when a child is murdered, when an innocent child is murdered. But when the father happens to be a killer himself, it inspires all sorts of empathetic vengeance that anyone can relate to. Not necessarily for the right reasons, but one can't help but feel very emotionally charged about that particular theme. So we deal with the themes of vengeance, visceral vengeance, understandable, empathetic vengeance, which is unpalatable in any capacity. However, you can empathize and sympathize for the reasons why one would be so emotionally charged. Theft, greed, wrath, sons, fathers, blood thicker than water. Ultimately, greed being the genesis of destruction, and almost anticlimactically the fulcrum upon which such biblical vengeance is exercised in order to satiate the loss of one's kin. This film's more violent, more gritty, and arguably more realistic than any of my other films have previously been. I've always been very keen on Jason Statham as an actor. In fact, I was the first person to use Jason Statham as an actor. I think the first thing I used him was in Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels. We opened the film on Jason. I always thought that Jason Statham should be a movie star. I'm very happy to see that he has become one. And it feels like we should be reunited. And I felt as though we should do something that wasn't funny for a change. I thought this would be the perfect story for Jason and I to be reunited on. It's not funny, this film. It's serious, and the theme is serious, and it's very violent and very aggressive. But I thought it'd be the perfect film for the perfect role for Jason to occupy. When it came to getting Jason to be in this film, it was as simple as calling him up and giving him a 2-minute pitch on what that film was. Neither of us overthunk it at the time. We liked the premise. The premise of the movie could be summarized in a sentence. Jason, I always felt, was perfect for this particular film, and I'm a big fan of his. And he's gone on and become incredibly successful. And I feel as though this film is really a question of selling apples, and you're actually buying apples. So it does what it says on the tin, this film, which is Jason Statham in revenge, in an intelligent genre movie, which its spine and motivation is that of revenge, intelligent revenge, and understandable revenge. Yeah, Jason and I have been mates for about 22 years, and I think we're probably closer now than we were 22 years ago, and I was pretty close with him 22 years ago. He's been on his journey, I've been on mine. He's moved back to, we both lived in Los Angeles I lived there for 7 years, he lived there for 10. And we've both found ourselves back in London. I see more of him now than I have done for 15 years or so, which is great. Yeah, he's one of my best mates. There's much I respect and like about Jason Statham. I see more of Jason now than I have done for 15 years. We're closer now than we were 22 years ago. I think we're on to make another movie shortly. I think, by the way, he doesn't look like his age today, which is the other strange thing. I don't know what he's up to. But yeah, he's still in great physical nick. He has a happy life, a happy family life. There's a lot that Jason's managed to juggle in his life very skillfully, with great wisdom. Jason has wisdom, funny enough. But I really respect him as both as an actor and a human being.
I'm Eddie Marston and I play Terry. Terry runs the cash truck depot. At the start of the story, there's been a recent robbery where one of his drivers has been killed. So he has a heightened sense of security and fear about losing another one of his drivers. And he has a kind of, Jason's character, H, comes into the depot and at first seems very efficient and very calm, but Terry's very aware of the fact that there's something not quite right. This is my 4th film with Guy, I believe. Yes, it is my 4th film. It's always the same. He knows exactly what he wants. He knows exactly how to do it. He's a very, very visceral filmmaker. He's very creative on his feet. And you can almost feel it being made and the creative decisions being made on set. Some films, the creative decision is made in the editing suite. So you do multiple takes, multiple coverage, and they go in and decide what film they're going to make. Guy doesn't do that. Guy, in a sense, is similar to Mike Leigh in that they decide to make the film with the camera. They make that decision on the day rather than in the editing suite. I enjoy it more. It's more creative. You feel more of the, you have more of a dance with the camera because the camera is very flexible and moves around you. Sometimes if you're just punching in and doing coverage, it's a very, very predictable process. But dramatically, if you feel a camera move with you or you're doing something, because you can feel the dramatic effect it will have on the film there and then, which is much more enjoyable for me. There's a preconceived idea about Guy that he has, that you can kind of analyse and predict a Guy Ritchie movie, and I think he's a lot more diverse than people give him credit for. So, I mean, I did The Gentleman last year, and this doesn't feel anything like The Gentleman. So, honestly, I think the only reason it's a Guy Ritchie film is because he's directing it. But that doesn't mean it will be the same as any other Guy Ritchie film.